Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in just a second as folks are coming in from the waiting room. It's exciting to see you all on this Saturday. Thanks for being with us today. All right. Welcome to our final day of the Virtual Advocacy Summit. I'm Joshua Rashon Streeter, the manager of Advocacy and Impact here at the Educational Theater Association. I am wearing a gray zip up, a black shirt underneath, a brown skin, and black hair. I am really excited to introduce the folks that will be chatting with us today. Our programming will focus on state and federal advocacy. And after we hear from our speakers today, we'll do a Q&A so that as you are talking, or sorry, as you're listening and hearing our presenters talk, you can answer or put in any questions in the Q&A. We'll answer those throughout, but we'll also have some dedicated time at the end. And then I'll close out with a little bit about some takeaways and thinking questions for you to build your own advocacy plan that accounts for ideas, strategies, and perspectives that you've heard about over the last 3 days of our virtual advocacy summit. So I'm so excited to introduce our first presenter, Randy Cohen. Randy leads national research and policy initiatives that highlight the impact of arts programs on youth and communities. As the Vice President of Research at Americans for the Arts, he develops tools and studies that help schools and organizations strengthen arts education nationwide. So, welcome, Randy. We're so excited to have you with us. Um, and I'll turn it over to you for your presentation.
Great. Thanks, Josh. And hi, everyone. It's a delight to be with you today. I'm a proud board member of EdTA, and also really just proud to be part of this virtual advocacy summit. It's a great series of webinars. And if this is the first one you're jumping into, make sure you go back and watch them all the way through because they're excellent. So I'm going to use a PowerPoint today, and so I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Y'all know this drill, right? And so yeah, let's see. There we go. Um, so today. We're going to talk about, advocacy at the state and national level, but really in claiming your impact. And if you leave with one thing today, remember the golden rule of advocacy: no numbers without a story, no stories without a number. And so let's get into it. But first, I like to remind everybody. Um, I came up a thespian, so I still have my card. I bring it to every board meeting, and so mine's been around for a while. But good old Troop 2753 in Sunnyvale, California, still active and going strong. So shout out to everybody back there, and you'll see a picture on the right there. You know, maybe not as much hair as I once had. Used to be kind of a Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn type for a lot of years, and as my work as an actor. But the years go on. So, but I gotta say, when I'm out there talking to elected leaders and business leaders and community leaders about the power of the arts, I really can say from my heart, the arts saved my life. I was not a great student in school. Whatever was going on outside the window was the most interesting thing happening that day, which may sound funny as your VP of research for Americans for the Arts. But it was theater and the arts that really just made me want to keep coming to school until, the lobes connected a little bit, and I started to understand, oh, okay, I get it. This is why we're here. So, um, anyway, so many of my theater friends in high school, I ended up going into the arts, but a lot of them didn't. a lot of the old gang, and we keep up. There's lawyers, there's researchers, there's economists, there's technicians, and there's computer people. We're in the heart of Silicon Valley there. Um, and, it doesn't matter which direction we went in our lives. We all look back, just how those theater experiences really helped shape it. I mean, as a research person, I call on my arts training every day. And so I'll just say right out of the gate, as you think about advocating for the arts and advocating for theater education, um, uh, who else can tell that story? There's a lot of people that have had theater experience that's helped shape their life. And so, as we know, we're not necessarily just about, creating the next generation of actors and directors and musicians and artists. We're really just about creating critical thinkers, problem solvers, good citizens, people who are happy to have as neighbors. And so, we bring a lot of incredible impact to our communities. When we're advocating, obviously we get it. We're here, but when you go and you talk to a decision maker, elected leader, a legislator, and you talk about some of the benefits of the arts, they get the spirit of it. But we're a pretty pragmatic country these days, and people want to know, like, what else? What are some of the other benefits that you're providing to the community? And so, that's we'll talk a little bit about how the arts address our and help strengthen our communities socially, educationally, economically, improving our health and well-being. But and you might think, oh, is this some kind of new 21st century phenomenon about how to talk about the arts pragmatically? Not really. And in fact, we've been using the arts in a very pragmatic way for a long time. And we're in our 250th anniversary year, of Declaration of Independence and all of that. And you recognize some pictures here, probably George Washington at the siege at Valley Forge, and it was cold. His troops, it was a ragtag bunch. They were freezing. They were hungry. They didn't, have enough ammunition. Well, we've all done 1776, right? We know the story. And actually, I just saw 1776 at Ford's Theater last Saturday. Um, and he was trying to think, how do I inspire this army? Well, he looked to the theater and he gave an order that a play called a play by Addison, a five-act play called Cato, be performed right there in the battlefield. And this play was about a young Roman nobleman who stood up to authority for something that he believed was right. And it was actually a very inspiring play to a lot of the Revolutionary era leaders. Um, and they had the play performed right there in the battlefield for his troops to watch. And his message was, look, tomorrow when we get out there and do battle, don't do it because I'm telling you to do it, but this is the republic we're aspiring to. This is why we're here. And he felt the theater was the best way to send that message. So, the arts have been used pragmatically for a long, long time. Of course, there's some great research also. That's a great story. But let's get into a little bit of data and talk generally about some arts education data, a little bit of theater education data. Some of this you may have come across before, and but the research just continues to be very impactful about how the arts, improve academic performance, improve attendance. Students who are engaged in the arts have better grades, better test scores, lower dropout rates. And I still like to come back to some fabulous research that was conducted by a UCLA researcher named James Catterall. He was a scholar in education at UCLA. And Dr. Catterall did some longitudinal research and he looked at 25,000 students in 1,000 different schools across the country, Department of Education data. So, very nationally representative set. And he took those 25,000 students and divided them into four quartiles, four equal groups based on their level of arts involvement. And it could be in school, it could be after school. And so, and then he compared the academic performance of those 25,000 students. And what he found is the arts involved students were outperforming the lesser arts, and the more arts involved were outperforming the lesser arts involved students. And again, better grades, better test scores, lower dropout rates. Now, because you're all good consumers of research, you're probably thinking like, well, yeah, but maybe some of those students are from, more affluent schools or, better educated families, and you'd expect them to do better. So what he did, he controlled for that, and he went back to his base of 25,000 students, and he looked at just the lowest socioeconomic quartile, and he did the same analysis. And what he found, not only did the results hold, but there was an even greater disparity between the arts involved and the less arts involved students, suggesting then to researchers that, maybe the arts help students catch up who got a late start or level the playing field. So when we talk about arts education benefits, we can talk about how these benefits cut across all socioeconomic strata. It's not just an urban thing, it's not just an affluence thing. So, really, really powerful research. Um, Dr. Catterall tracked those cohorts over time. And even into their 20s, as young adults, there were still measurable differences between the more arts involved and the less arts involved students. The arts involved students more likely to have some college going, more likely to be in career oriented jobs. So, positive evidence, how these, the arts propel us throughout our lives. Looking ahead, just at theater education specifically, there has been some research just on that, and school administrators, vast majority say theater programs strengthen creativity skills, creative drama enhances fluent, flexible thinking. After school theater programs strengthen our collaboration, creative problem solving, empathy skills. So lots of benefits there. And um, we see this across many of the art forms, but the arts and theater education really making a difference in academic performance. Yet one of the fascinating findings is just 28% of public high schools in high poverty areas offer theater instruction. So we've got a gap there. And that's something we need to be thinking about. Is everybody having the opportunity to experience the theater and get these benefits? Um, I want to lean a little bit into the creativity and innovation aspect of this because that's going to be a real compelling message these days when you speak to your decision makers. Um, there's a report done by the Conference Board. The Conference Board is the national organization for big business in this country. If you're a Fortune 1000 CEO, that's where you go to for business information. And they give you the leading index of economic indicators, the Consumer Confidence Index. If So their research shows, the Conference Board's research shows, creativity is among the top 5 applied skills that business leaders are looking for. In fact, it's even leapfrog the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic. Of course, you got to be able to read, write, and do math. But if you could take some creativity and apply that to your scientific, your coding, your agriculture, all the engineering areas, those are the high paying innovation jobs we're all trying to attract to our communities. Um, so their research shows 72% of business leaders say creativity is of high importance in hiring. 85% of that group says we're struggling to find the people we're looking for. Now, there's no typing tests for creativity, right? And so, how do you know if you got someone creative across the table from you? So they asked, and there were 2 indicators way at the top above everything else. First, entrepreneurial activity, starting your own business. That makes sense, right? The second one, study of the arts. And when I speak to, especially to students or at universities, I always remind students, get involved in the arts, take a ceramics class, join a choir, and put it on your resume because that's something that our business leaders are looking for these days. We used to have a banker who was board chair of Americans for the Arts, and he was a big time banker. I mean, at the same time, he was board chair of Americans for the Arts. He was also chair of the American Banking Association. So, right, he was up there. Um, and he would tell us that he always asked people in interviews about their connection to the arts. Are they makers? Do they like to attend? To have a conversation about, because for him, that was a proxy for creativity. Then he'd always quip, except for my tellers. I don't want creative tellers, but everybody else, we want to be creative. Um, so that's the importance of creativity. And I'm going to give you a little data point here from our public opinion study, which I published a year ago, December. So I guess that's almost a year and a half ago now. Largest public opinion study of its kind ever conducted about the arts. And it's over 3,000 interviews, so it's really solid stuff. And what we found is two-thirds of the American public said the arts make me feel creative and like a more creative person. And a couple other questions. Over half the population says that the creativity is now a part of their job. And the more creative they are as individuals or as part of a team, the more successful they are in the workplace. So creativity is a big deal. And so as we're trying to get the private sector and business leaders to help us advocate for the importance of arts education, these are the kinds of data that are really compelling for them. Now, they're actually not the only ones who get this. The US Department of Commerce actually does something now called the Arts and Cultural Production Satellite Account. Specifically, it's their Bureau of Economic Analysis, top economic shop on the planet, the BEA. And they do something called it's this satellite account. And this is looking at some economic measures of the arts. And so what they did is they took the US economy and dumped it on a table and pulled out every arts receipt they could find, nonprofit, commercial, Hollywood, Broadway, publishing, architecture, design, drama departments, individual artists, import, export, any art style in the US economy that they could find. And they found in 2023, arts and culture is a $1.2 trillion industry in the United States. That is trillion with a T. That is not a typo with a T. Um, is that a lot or a little? That is 4.2% of the nation's economy. That's a bigger share of the economy than construction, transportation, agriculture, and it supports 5.4 million jobs. Now, you ask any legislator what their three priorities are, they're going to tell you jobs, jobs, and jobs, right? So let's connect the work we do with what's important to them as a way to get into that. It's a gateway to get into something they care about, into that conversation. Arts, amongst all the great things they do, are also a jobs industry. They diversify economies in rural communities. The arts are making a big impact. So that's a really important way to talk about the arts as well. You'll find there at the bottom, I've got a website because not only are the national data impressive, but now actually they've studied all 50 states. And so you can find out what your own state data is as well. So go to a website. It's nasaa-arts.org. That's the website for the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies. And all of you have a state arts agency, and that's their national organization. It's just a great dashboard. It's really easy to use to find out what your state economy data is as well. So, and you can read more about the national study. So again, think about the economy, when you're talking about making your case. All right. Joe, we talked about jobs, GDP. One more thing about this study, because obviously the data are incredibly impressive, but the fact that the BEA even does this research is a powerful message on its own. They only do like a dozen of these satellite accounts where they look at specific industries. There's got to be a really compelling reason. Is it for economic prosperity, international competitiveness? It's an understanding, it's an acknowledgement that we live in a global innovation economy. And innovation, is the key to economic prosperity. Creativity fuels innovation. Arts and culture fuels creativity. And so you're seeing that from the business world, and now you're seeing that from the federal government and the economics world. So some really, really powerful data there. So taking all that together, what this means for workforce and creativity and arts education, this is kind of what it looks like on the ground. So this happy fella, back a little over a decade ago now, received the Nobel Prize for medicine, Thomas Sudoff. And, the reporter called him up and, Professor, congratulations. Uh, you know, tell us. And one of the reporters asked him, "Who is your most influential teacher?" And without missing a beat, he said, "I would all to my bassoon teacher." And he went on to explain how it was his arts education that made him a great scientist, that gave him, the habits of mind that helped him succeed, drive for excellence, pattern recognition, problem solving skills, perseverance, when it gets hard, we continue going through it, ability to work as part of a team, ability to deal with ambiguity, like there may be five solutions to this, right? Same thing we do, as in the arts, there's a million ways to play that scene, we're going to keep working and keep until we find the right one. That's a great story, of course, but there's actually national data or larger data that shows this may not be a fluke example. There's a Michigan State University researcher named Robert Root Bernstein, Root-Bernstein. Just Google him. He's an incredible writer, great articles, academic stuff, but also sort of kind of popular magazine type of things that are very accessible reading. He and his team have been studying creativity for decades, and he's a MacArthur Genius Award winner and all that kind of stuff. They went and looked at all the Nobel laureates in the sciences, going back to the beginning, at their level of arts involvement, and compared them to scientists at two scientific societies, one in the US, one in the UK. The Nobel laureates, 17 times more likely to be actively engaged in the arts. Um, so, really powerful stuff. It's may not be causal, correlations there perhaps, but I would say, where there's smoke, there's fire, and something's definitely going on here. So, a really interesting set of data. Now, the good news is 9 out of 10 Americans believe it's important that every student pre-K through 12 receives a quality arts education. 9 out of 10, which, that's like just about everybody. I mean, I don't think there's really such a thing as 10 out of 10, but 9 out of 10, we're pretty much there with everybody. Yet, in the same survey, and this is Americans Speak Out About the Arts, our public opinion survey, when asked, do students in your community have enough opportunities to take classes and participate in the arts? Only 52% said yes, barely more than half. So we see this huge valuing of arts education, yet only half the population says, you know what? Everyone in my community's got, all the students in my community have enough opportunity to participate in that. So that gap there, that's our mission. That's our job. We got to plug that gap. And, I mentioned some of the great arts education data earlier. The public gets that as well. 70% of the American public agrees, and that's the number on the right there, the arts help students perform better academically. The amazing thing is, um, these numbers are people with kids, people without kids, grandparents. I mean, we're talking about the whole population. And so even people who aren't around kids very much see the value of the work you do. Just a couple other great things that the arts do. We talked about being good citizens and critical thinkers, and election seasons are starting to pop up around here. People are engaged in the arts, more likely to vote. We're better, more engaged in our communities. Um, so many of us worry these days about the fractiousness in our communities and the divisiveness, and the research shows that the art people really believe the arts unify our communities. 72% of the American public says the arts provide shared experiences for people of different age, race, faith, or ethnicity. 63%, the arts help me understand other cultures in my community. So, again, just one more reason we're on the right side of what's being done um, in our communities. Um, I want to talk a little bit about just a really favorite area of mine that also connects. That's arts and health. And you can see I'm just starting to pull the issues off of the front page, right? Jobs, the economy, healthcare. Um, and so I've got an arts background. I also have a medical research background. I worked in research at Stanford University. I worked at Scripps Clinic and Research Foundation in La Jolla, California. When I worked at Scripps, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we used to have live chamber music in the lobby. It was a beautiful lobby, and they'd turn the fountain down. Um, but it was amazing how just, handful of musicians would completely transform the space. And patients could walk in, be wheeled in, they could bring their family along. Medical staff could be there. And what we would start to notice, though, is staff, is that patients who we saw in our rooms clinically, lethargic, depressed, even if you have a view of the ocean, which everybody there did, nobody wants to be in the hospital, right? But in the presence of the music, you could see physical transformation in people. Their eyes got less cloudy, their posture got better. It's like, they could sense a greater awareness of the environment around them, and you could just see it visually, a transformation. And it was like, it's like they're getting an IV drip of the arts. Something's going on here. And now there's this growing body of research that shows when the arts are part of our healthcare, we're seeing shorter hospital stays, less medication, less depression, fewer doctor visits, evidence even that it saves money. And we're also seeing a lot of evidence and research now about how the arts are helping our mental health. During the pandemic, mental health issues tripled in this country. The U.S. Bureau tracks it. And yet we see these research studies that even participating in the arts once a month starts to improve physical and mental health. The last Surgeon General said we've got a loneliness epidemic in this country, and isolation. And of course, a lot of our students are feeling that right now too. So, and you'll find evidence out there that the arts are helping students with belonging, connectedness, expressiveness. So that's a huge issue, right? I mean, that's something we're all thinking about, especially at the high school level. So, the arts are helping our communities there as well. The arts actually touch myriad issues in our communities, and um, you know, uh, if you're interested in like, well, what else are they doing? We've got this fabulous tool on our website. It's called the Arts Impact Explorer, and I call it the pinwheel. So the link is right there at the bottom of the page, americansforthearts.org/explore. Really easy to find. This thing spins around, and you can find about 30 different community issues. Some of the ones I've talked about, but also um, a whole other range of type of arts and community issues. And you click on it, and it's like, well, here's about arts and park and rec, or public art, or healthcare, or mental health, or transportation. And it's got some case studies and some research. It spins around. It's fabulous. So I just want to make sure that's something that you're all aware of. So a little bit about advocacy now. And advocacy, it can be an intimidating thing to do in the beginning. There's been a lot of content, in the meetings this week, but at the end of the day, it's about you and your students, and everything here is good for a teacher. It's good for a student. It's good at a local, state, federal level. Everything we talked about crosses all the different lines here. It's about showing up and having a meeting, and it can be a little intimidating at first, especially if you're in a state or the U.S. Capitol with the long marble halls and everything. But I know when I came to Washington first, oh my God, I studied so hard. I had everything memorized, um, and what I quickly realized is they're so happy that you're there. They're so happy to see you. Sometimes it's the legislator, sometimes it's the staff person. That's okay. A staff person is totally fine. You might get more time with the staff person. They report everything to their, elected member. And so don't ever feel like, oh man, this is going to be a bust or something like that. But they love seeing and hearing from your constituents. So, why the first meeting may be the hardest, never let it be the last. Show up, come back, be there again and again. But once you get in there, what do you do? And of course, there's whole libraries out there about advocacy and lobbying and all that type of thing. I break it down to three messages. I mean, three questions. What's the message? Who gets the message? And who delivers the message? Right? So, um, pretty simple. So let's just start with that first one. What's the message? Well, we've talked about a bunch of them today, right? Students who are engaged in the arts are performing better academically. They've got better grades. They've got better test scores. They're less likely to drop out of school. We're worried about the mental health and isolation of our students, and the research is there showing that our engagement in the arts is helping that as well. There's a lot of messages, but we need a quiver full of messages. We need arrows for all of those things, right? Because you're never exactly sure what different people care about. So we got to be ready to talk about all of them. And so that gets us to the second question, which is who gets the message? And that's where we do a little bit of our research, right? Who are the decision makers? Who are the authorizers in this environment? If it's a school board, is it a committee? You know, how many of them do we need to get a majority? And or it might be it might be the principal. If it might be, if you're going for foundation funding, is it the president of the foundation? Maybe it's the trustees. And so, who are making the decisions in that space, and what do they care about? Now, the nice thing is, if you're speaking to a legislator, you go to their website. List the committees that they're on. You can see some of the speeches that they've given. You'll see all their press releases. And in 5 minutes, just scan that. You can kind of get a pretty good idea what they really care about. And connect that to the arts and to arts education. And that just gives you their lead, right? Because we are looking for a hook. Yeah. So start with something they care about. That'll give you that and that bridge, and then you can talk about a lot more issues as well. Sometimes it's education. The nice thing about the pandemic is it's okay to talk about mental health now. We've got members of Congress. It's like, yeah, look, mental health is my number one issue these days. Let me tell you, 10 years ago, nobody said that. So it's amazing how quickly some of these things can change. So what's the message? We got a bunch of them. Who gets the message? Who are those decision makers? What do they care about? And then third, who delivers the message? Now we're the usual suspects, right? So who else can deliver the message? Um, I'm in Washington, like your other speakers today, the DC area, and so they bring me up to Capitol Hill, and I mean they can see me coming a mile away, right? Guys hide their wallets, ladies lock their purse in a drawer. I mean, they know what I'm after, right? But if I can bring an artist, an educator, a military officer, a healthcare provider, um, different people to talk about how the arts and arts education are improving their work in their community, it totally transforms the conversation, right? So I'll give an example. The arts are a nonpartisan issue. Remember that. It's not just one party or another. You can find leadership on both sides of the aisle. But we were doing we were at we do make sure there's an arts presence at both political conventions, the RNC and the DNC. So we were down in Tampa, Florida at the RNC with the Republican convention and doing a session on the arts and arts education because we want to make sure there's an arts presence everywhere as much as possible. Mike Huckabee was chair of our panel. As he was for many years, who's actually great on arts education. Um, and so, because if you want a bunch of Republicans show up to your thing, you put somebody like him as the head of the panel, right? And so they all want to hear what he has to say about arts education and the arts. But we had the mayor of Mesa, Arizona. He's the one who's this story's about today, and he was telling a story of how it was budget hearing night in Mesa, and it was him and the city council, and they were all lined up, and 60 people had signed up online to do their 3 minutes, and testify about the city's funding for the arts. And he said, I noticed that night that the chief of police was there, which wasn't unusual for a city council meeting. He said, but he was in full chief of police regalia, hat, tie, medals, and that was a little bit different. Had caught his eye early. Well, after all the 60 people had done their 3 minutes, the chief of police asked for 3 minutes. And he came up and said, you know, if you have to take a cut out of the arts budget, I'd rather you just took that out of my public safety budget. Because when they do their job well, it makes my job easier. Can you imagine if we had 1,000 police chiefs on that message, right? Arts funding problems solved. So, who delivers the message? That's a big deal. Um, and I want to get back to that story I was talking about, the golden rule I was talking about. No stories without a number, no numbers without a story. And again, we're in the arts and we're full of stories. And there's numbers to go with every one of these stories. Um, and I just really want to remind folks that you all make the difference. Everybody here makes the difference. And the power of one vote. And so it was just one vote that gave Thomas Jefferson, the White House, one electoral college vote. One vote got my home state of California in the Union. This was a fascinating story. It was just one vote. This is the suffrage story. In 1920, it was one vote in the Tennessee legislature that ratified the 19th Amendment and gave women the right to vote. So in the Tennessee legislature, it passed by one vote, and that was enough. That was the 36th state. So that was enough to add the 19th Amendment. But what was interesting is it was done by a 24-year-old named Harry Byrne, and it was because his mother told him to vote yes for it. He wasn't so sure. And so The entire 19th Amendment came down to one tie-breaking vote by this 24-year-old whose mother told him what to do. Just now, more modern days, we had a great story just here in Northern Virginia a few years ago of a state House election. Shelley Simons, in her state legislative House election, it was tied after the vote, and they recounted it, and it was still tied. And the state law said, all right, after the recount, you draw lots. And so the her opponent, the Republican, uh, won by they just drew lots. And that's what tipped the state house legislature that session. So one vote makes the difference. And that means we can really help make the difference. And then on the other hand, poor King Charles I, 68 votes to behead, 67 against beheading. I should have made a few more phone calls, right? So, the work we really do makes a difference. So let me wrap up here, and just that it's so easy to take our work for granted and everything. And so what you're looking at here is a picture from the Louvre in 1913. Uh, Bad news out of Paris. The Mona Lisa got stolen, and those hooks are where it had been hanging. And it took it 2 years to get it back. But in the 2 years that the Mona Lisa was missing, more people went to see where it had been hanging than in the previous 14 years. So we need to build the habit of advocacy. We've got to be relentless advocates. Got to tell our story again and again and again. Come in with the numbers, come in with the data, remember the golden rule, and build those relationships. Build those relationships by meeting with your decision makers repeatedly over time, because everything you do advances arts and arts education in your community, and you're important for doing it. Thanks very much. I'll pass it back to Josh.
Thank you so much, Randy. We're super excited to hear some of the things you're sharing. I know I'm really taking away some of the resources you offered. I was bookmarking them as you were chatting, and I love those 3 points and the idea of the golden rule. And I really appreciate this. These moments in history that you're uplifting help us think about the what we do matters. And I also love the not just the landscape of what is happening in your state, but what is happening across the country, what is happening across the world, in order to make sense of how we leverage our story and the data to make claims and arguments that support our work. One of the things that I want to offer is Randy has graciously agreed to stick around for a little bit. And if you have questions that are percolating, please put them in the Q&A and we'll be able to have those there for when we do our Q&A with Amanda, Jazzmone, and Randy. All right. We are going to transition into our second workshop of the afternoon. I'm so excited that we have two amazing folks with us today. Both Amanda and Jazzmone are part of the Arts Education Alliance, and they're our colleagues from the National Association for Music Education. They'll help us think about strategic advocacy. First, Amanda Karhuse leads national advocacy efforts for music education, working with policymakers and coalitions to ensure arts remain a core part of our schools. She coordinates federal and state policy initiatives and serves as a lead lobbyist for the Arts Education Alliance. One thing that you might not know is a lot of the emails or a lot of the templates and a lot of the things that we send you out. Amanda is spearheading that from her position. And so we really thank you and your team for providing all those great resources to EdTA and other organizations. And our second presenter is Amanda's colleague, Jazzmone Sutton. She builds networks and supports educators to secure music and arts programs nationwide. Is a senior manager of state advocacy and equity at NAFME. She develops policy initiatives, leads advocacy leadership force, and empowers educators to expand opportunities for students. One other amazing connection is Jazzmone has been so gracious with her time and has been meeting with EdTA about the great work that they're doing in their state to state program, the Advocacy Leadership Force, which is a model that we're learning from here in EdTA, and will be learning a lot of things that Amanda and Jasmine are doing and building some of those into our own practices with our State Advocacy Alliance. Jasmine shared with us in December a bunch of things that we could be doing as EDTA to start that ball rolling. And we're so excited to hear from both of you today. And I'll turn it over to you two.
Okay. I'm learning how this new slide projector works. Thanks, Josh, again for having us. And thank you all for being here. As Josh mentioned, I'm Amanda Karhuse. I lead the advocacy and public policy team at NAFME and also serve as the lead lobbyist for the Arts Education Alliance. And its purpose is really to amplify arts education through joint advocacy work. And I'm really proud to represent the other arts ed disciplines in addition to our music educators. My mom is a visual artist, but I also am the proud mom of a ninth grade choir and theater student. So we have the musical coming up in just a few weeks. So I know how hard you all work, and so really appreciate you taking the time out of a Saturday to be here to learn about federal and state policy issues and how you can get more engaged in our advocacy work. So we're going to start with the federal role in education. And while most decisions and most funding are still provided at the state and local level, the federal role is really to ensure that educational equity and access is a reality for all students. So these programs are intended to support the schools and the students who really need extra support, whether they are English learners, come from low income backgrounds, whatever the challenges they may have, disabilities and such. That really was the purpose of the federal role. And I'll admit it has been sort of a challenging year to be an education lobbyist. We do have a president who was elected with sort of a mandate to send education back to the states and to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. So, in response, the Arts Education Alliance has issued a number of statements supporting the department. We have also signed on to the Department of Education Protection Act, and we launched an advocacy campaign last summer when we were really concerned about the delayed funding, the title funding going to schools and districts in July. We're also following really closely the interagency agreements that have been announced over the past 6 months or so. And this is after we had a number of staff reductions and the cancellation of some grant awards to organizations that had received awards under a variety of programs, one of which being the Assistance for Arts Education program. But like I mentioned, we've had 10 separate interagency agreements announced to date. This does include the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, and this is where nearly all of the federal grant programs that can be used to support a well-rounded education that includes the arts, where these programs are administered. In response, again, the Arts Education Alliance issued a statement in November opposing the decision. We also revised our call to action on FY 2026 funding at the time to urge Congress to prevent the fragmentation of the department and keep these programs where they belong. I will say that two of these agreements have been announced in calendar year 2026. And this was even after Congress included language in the final appropriations bill expressing its concern about the fragmentation of education programs across multiple agencies. And they said, I'll quote here, that their concern was that it would create inefficiencies, result in additional costs to American taxpayers, and cause delays and administrative challenges in funding reaching states, districts, and schools. So to date, we do know that the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education staff are still at the U.S. Department of Education, but some higher ed staff and individuals who work on career and technical education and on adult education programs have been detailed to the Department of Labor. So we've been watching really closely to see how grant administration and funding has worked in those areas. We also expect there to be additional legal action on this issue. The law, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, is really clear about the Department of Education's role in administering these programs and distributing the grants to districts and to states. And so we always just kind of hold our breath and stay tuned and see how all of this plays out. Oops, sorry. Trying to advance to that next slide. So that brings me to the Every Student Succeeds Act. There are a few major federal laws, but this is really the one with the greatest impact on K-12 education. And it was first passed back in 1965, along with a number of other civil rights laws. And it outlines really broad requirements around standards, assessments, and accountability. The most recent version was the Every Student Succeeds Act, which passed in 2015. And it's really important for the arts because it shifted the language from core academic subjects to this definition of a well-rounded education. And if you look at the fine print in red, you can see that both the arts and music are included in that definition. And one of the priorities of the Arts Education Alliance is that if we ever reauthorize ESEA, don't expect it to happen anytime soon, but if we ever have an opportunity to update the definition, we do want to include all five arts disciplines and call them out by name because we know that there has been some confusion in implementation and some people interpret the arts to just mean visual arts. So the Arts Ed Alliance, I think we said formed back in May of 2024, and we actually had a really big advocacy win just a few months later, which was exciting. And that was when the U.S. Department of Education sent a Dear Colleague letter to all chief state school officers just reminding them that certain funds under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, but also a few other federal education laws, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act, that funds under those laws could be used to support music, dance, theater, media arts, and visual arts. And it explained specific title programs and included some examples of how states and districts have been able to use that funding to support their programs. And as you can see on the screen, it was the first time that the Department of Ed had sent a letter and guidance like this to states since 2013, which obviously was 2 years before ESSA was even passed. So the Arts Education Alliance has partnered with the NAMM Support Music Coalition for the past 2 years to collect information from arts educators about how they've used federal funding, but also other funding sources to support their programs. We'll be releasing the new report this week. It's actually going to be a report summarizing data from 2 years of surveys. So it will include information for both the 2023-24 and the 2024-25 school years. And you can see on this slide some of the key themes, notably that most survey respondents rely on district funding to support their arts programs. And that can obviously vary greatly across the nation and within states. In our most recent survey, 55% of the respondents said that they had used federal funds to support their programs. I will say that we don't have a high response rate for this survey, so I do think we are hearing more from arts educators who are able to access the funds, the federal funds, than those who don't. And so we've tried to make it clear that we really want all arts educators to be responding to the survey because we are trying to get more information about how those programs are funded and also what their unmet needs are, that if they were to be able to access some of the funding under these federal programs, what they could be using it for to support their programs. It's really helpful information for our advocacy work. But this just shows sort of the spread of where that funding came from, how they're using the federal funds. They are using it mostly for instructional materials. This includes textbooks, digital resources, other supplemental material. And then those were the most frequently cited use of federal funds, followed by musical instruments and other equipment. The report does break down the specific uses of Title I. This is the funding that can be used to support schools that have a large population of low-income students. Title II, which provides professional development and mentoring opportunities for arts educators, and Title IV-A, which is a program that can be used to support a well-rounded education, safe and healthy students, and the effective use of technology. And then the final program is the Assistance for Arts Education program, which is a very small $35 million competitive grant program that can be used to support arts education and spread best practices among grantees. So I will mention last year, the Arts Education Alliance did create a new webpage with some specific resources around federal funds, and it includes toolkits. So that really will help arts educators at the local level know who they should be talking to about using that funding to support their programs and giving some really specific examples. So from our 2023-24 survey, I pulled a couple examples from theater and how arts educators were able to use that funding. One school was able to purchase a new soundboard for the auditorium. Another provided professional development opportunities, including paying to attend the EdTA Theater Education Conference. And then a third survey respondent said that they had used the funding for summer enrichment camps for theater students, among others. So that brings us to where funding has played out and our advocacy work to date. This just shows sort of the final outcome for FY 2026 appropriations. So this is the funding for the 2026-27 school year. And you can see in that final column on the right how everything fared compared to previous year's funding, but also the president's budget proposal and what the House and Senate appropriations committees had approved earlier in fall of 2025. And you can see that actually education funding fared rather well. In comparison, it was a really big win. It was somewhat surprising, but we did have slight increases for both Title I and IDEA. This is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and funding to support special education services. So we had slight increases for both of those two programs, and then most other K-12 education programs were level funded. So it just means that we keep up the fight because Congress completed the education funding in January, we didn't really get much of a reprieve for us, the advocacy team at NAFME, or for our grassroots advocates. We are now diving right into the FY 2027 appropriations cycle. So this will be the funding for the 2027-28 school year. We're already a little delayed in the process. We are hearing that the president is going to submit a budget proposal to Congress next Friday on April 3rd, but that's about 6 weeks later than is the norm. Usually it's a few weeks after the president provides the State of the Union address, would he would then submit his budget proposal to Congress shortly after that. So we're already a bit delayed. We know that the House and Senate appropriations committees are already starting to hold hearings. They're collecting priorities from members of Congress and will be soon drafting bills. So this is your opportunity to advocate at the federal level. If you click on this QR code, it will take you to the NAFME Grassroots Action Center, where we have a campaign on FY 2027 funding. It includes support for Title I, Title II, Title IV-A, and the Assistance for Arts Education program. And it has, you can send your members of Congress a pre-written message that's already in the system, but we always encourage you to personalize it in some way, just to talk about why funding for arts education is so important to you, and to even share a story, an impact story, if you have one. In addition to the federal funding, we do have some champions on Capitol Hill who have introduced legislation to support arts education. They include bills that would clarify the use of federal funds to support all of the arts disciplines, also to improve data collection on access and participation. So we have a better understanding of where students have access in all five disciplines and what the participation rates look like. Another bill, the Reimagining Inclusive Arts Education Act, would provide professional development for arts educators to better support students with disabilities in their classroom. And then we have two bills that would strengthen the arts and arts education programs at historically Black colleges and universities and other minority serving institutions. So I will be happy to answer questions about any of that at the end, but I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jazzmone now.
Thanks, Amanda. Now it's my turn to play with the. Ooh, yay! I think I went too fast. Okay. Hi, my name is Jazzmone, and I get the honor of working with Amanda with our music education advocacy leaders at the state level, and I'm going to share some state level arts education policy. On the screen, you will see some examples of some of the wins that we have been having within the past year or so. The first couple are around recognizing students for their dedication and hard work within arts education throughout their high school career. So in Delaware, this bill was actually introduced this month, I think around the 17th, and then it flew through the education committee and it has already passed the House. And so great news for Delaware, along with Louisiana, again, who is working for a seal of fine arts, a similar process. Our advocates spoke on the Hill for Louisiana last week, and again, it sailed through their education committee as well. New York has a bill that would require arts instruction in public schools. It's very similar to the GAME Act that Amanda just shared, and it just passed the Senate. So exciting news about those states and their advocacy work, and now they're working on the second half of getting those bills passed. Now, Massachusetts, we're going to be talking about the dollars and cents, more specifically the 1%. In Massachusetts, they have a bill called the Lowell-Mason Act, which would take 1% of the education funding and it would send it directly towards arts and education. This is an exciting move. They have been working on this bill. If you are in Massachusetts, you know that your legislative cycle is 2 years. And so they've been working on that bill for over a year now. And we're entering the second half. So I highly recommend that if you are in Massachusetts, to reach out to the Arts Learning Network there to get involved with those advocacy efforts. Along with Massachusetts, when it comes to funding, Missouri is doing some really great work. They're working on a pilot program to provide professional development at multiple sites throughout the state. And this is a pilot program that they hope to expand because right now it's going to be provided for music educators. But if it is successful, then they will increase the funding so that it is a statewide pilot program for not just music, but all of the art forms. And then lastly, one huge win that we love to celebrate, which is Virginia, and they have successfully advocated, and the governor has signed a bill that will have a fine arts seal for high school graduates. So congratulations to folks in Virginia, and if you are in Virginia, please make sure you reach out to your program leader or someone within your Department of Education to find more about that program. All right, let's keep moving. Now, if you're unaware what policy exists within your state, we highly recommend this amazing resource from our partners at the Arts Education Partnership, or AEP for short. They publish an annual art scan to help advocates know what's the policy, what are neighboring states' policy look like. And what's a great thing about the art scan is that it gives you an at a glance, which is kind of an overview, but it also gives you the opportunity to dive deeper and to locate the specific legislation and text of your bill. And the various policies that they cover include standards, instructional time, graduation requirements, and you can see how it compares your state to other states. And we will share the link to this with Joshua and the leaders at EdTA so you can take a deeper look into what are the policies that you currently have, but also what are the policies that could be enacted in your state based on who else is in your area geographically across the country. All right. So, in other news, NAFME recently published our model legislation to support arts education at this state level in January, which we're super excited about. You can scan the QR code to access all of the materials for the mandating arts education standards training and resources overall. We call it the Maestro Act. And it has multiple sections to provide dedicated funding for arts education, develop arts education requirements for grades pre-K through 12, create arts and STEAM diploma seals, as I just mentioned, establish a minimum arts education standards for teachers, and improve teacher recruitment and retention. The draft can be introduced as a comprehensive legislation, or it could be split up into smaller bills depending on the state needs. And accompanying the model legislation, I just want to show you how it's broken up. So these are the different areas of the bill. Again, it can be introduced as smaller sections for bills, but it could be introduced as a comprehensive bill. So, as I said earlier, several states are introducing legislation around a fine arts seal or a civic certification for fine arts. Maybe that's something you want in your state because you've checked out the AEP scan and you're like, oh, we don't have that. This is something that you can use and essentially take the text, modify it so that it fits your state, meet with your elect official, and then go through the process of having that implemented as a state policy. Okay. In addition to this context, we also have accompanying resources as well, again, for the Maestro Act. And my favorite thing along with this is if there's one thing you take away from me, it is meant to be flexible. Okay. We walk you through what do you say when you go to a legislator? How do you build a coalition? And that is all in the strategic plan. And so we highly recommend that you take some time to just dig through the strategic plan on how to make this happen. right? Because I know that you are probably thinking, wow, that's amazing. How do we amplify the work of arts education in our state? And some of you are probably even wonder, how do we do it at the local level? Guess what? This resource can be modified to fit the local level. Just because it says state doesn't mean that it has to stay at the state. You can bring it to your school board. Also, some of our advocates say, well, mandating seems very forceful. Change the name. We want it to be as flexible as possible. So, again, I'm going to go back a little bit. Let me see if I can go back. Yay! Scan that QR code really quickly. Get this resource because it is a great resource for advocates who are trying to figure out how do we amplify arts education through policy. And again, even though it says state level, we really want you to utilize it. So consider how it could be done at the local level. Okay, I'm going to move forward. Ooh, this is so nice. All right. So what can you do? All right, research. Like I said, utilize the Arts Education Partnership, their Art Scan. Again, it's an overview and an in-depth look at state policy. A lot of great resources there. But also research what's going on in your state. Assess your resources. Who do you need to know? And then that strategic plan that I just showed you in this former slide, it'll talk to you about who are the potential groups that you can connect with to see who's already doing this work. Is there a connector? Is there a leader that's already doing it? Or how do you position yourself and your network to become the leaders in doing the work? And then collect impact stories. Randy, I love, love, love your golden rule. No stories without numbers and no numbers without stories. I hope I got that correct. But yes, exactly. Collect those stories. Make it easy. We all have students that show up to the performances and maybe their parents have to drop them off and they're all scrolling on their phones. Put a QR code in the program, put a QR code on the screen, and ask questions like, how have you noticed your child positively impacted by arts education? What has your child shown you because they've been a part of arts education? Google Forms and digital ways of collecting stories have a huge impact on your advocacy. And remember, everyone is an advocate. We just have to help them see that they can be, okay? And then we're going to share those stories. We're going to take that data, we're going to take those numbers, and we're going to share it with the decision makers. But you're going to come informed because you're going to use that model legislation. You're going to have the language, and you're going to go and share that with decision makers. And as my friend says, when you come with a problem, come with at least two solutions. So the problem is we need to amplify arts education. The solution is whatever you have chosen from the Maestro Act or solutions that you've created yourself, right? And then stay informed. Make sure that you are connecting again with maybe there's arts leaders in your state, maybe there's an education publication or network in your state so that you're informed about just general education policy as a whole, but also stay informed with your administration. Just say, hey, have you heard anything that's happening in the district? Go to a school board meeting. Share these stories at your school board meetings. The more informed you are, the better you are at being able to act proactively and not reactively. Okay? And let's talk about setting up a meeting. So, when working with advocates, they say, Jazzmone, I want to meet with the legislator, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. How do I do that? So the first thing you need to do is figure out what their email address is or their phone number. And you can do that by going to your state's legislator page and saying, okay, who is my representative? There's a great tool, usually on your state's webpage. You find that, and then you write this easy script that's on the screen. I'll take a second for you to screenshot it. But introduce yourself. I'm a constituent and, I teach in X, Y, and Z. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to schedule a meeting. The power of online. You do not have to go to your state capital because sometimes that's like 2, 3, 4 hours away. Meet with them online. That is possible. Meet with them when they're in the district. That is possible. Call them. You just don't have to meet with them in person. There's multiple opportunities for you to meet. Also, just because you meet with them one time doesn't mean it has to be the last time, okay? So be flexible in those meeting dates and times, and you want to talk about the importance of theater education in your district, and how they can take action to be a part of the solution and support arts education, and then to give them some opportunities, and always end with, I look forward to hearing from you, thank you for your time, right? um, if you end up getting a meeting with a staffer, someone on their staff, that's totally fine. Again, it's not going to be the last time you meet with them, right? So this is a great kind of template. Feel free to change it. Feel free to even link to a story that you have collected from your community or a video from your students. And it may take one, two, three, six, nine emails, but that's okay because our students are worth the effort. Our arts education community is worth the effort. And one time might not be enough, but nine times might just be the right number. Okay? So after you set up your meeting, what do you say? What do you do? Well, the first thing you do is you make your introductions, right? I get the honor to work with our advocates, and whenever they walk into an office, they're so excited. They introduce themselves and they jump right in, and they forget to ask the person who's actually in the office what's their connection to arts education. Make sure the staffers get an opportunity to share their connection. Ask them, so tell me, have you done any work in theater, or are you connected to the arts? Do you know anyone that's connected to the arts? Try to find a common ground. And from there, even if they say, oh, I could never, never do any arts. Oh, I'm not artistic. Oh, I'm not this. That is the perfect opportunity to say, well, if you were in my space, I would love to teach you X, Y, and Z. Or, oh, great, because we have an opening for A, B, and C. Come and visit, right? Because as educators, that's our job, to educate people. You are an educator. And if they say that, oh, I could never do it, that's when you lean in and say, yeah, you can. I got you. I'm an educator. I'm a professional. You are the content expert. So welcome them in. Find that common ground, even if they don't want to find it themselves. From there, you're going to share a story because you've already collected your story and data, right? And then you're going to, again, connect to that legislator, connect to that staffer. Because again, you might just be meeting with a staffer, um, and lean in to being that charismatic educator and finding a way to connect with them. Specifically connect whatever your ask is. So if you're asking for legislation that supports a seal for fine arts, or funding, or scheduling, if you're talking to someone at the local district level, find a way to connect your ask to your story, okay? And then connect that to the legislator. Side note, I saw recently online the music teacher wanted the school board to know what it was like to play instruments. So they brought in boom whackers and they put up on the screen a little boom whackers, and all of the board members had to figure out how to play boom whackers. Like that took maybe 5 to 10 minutes out of their meeting time. Be creative in how you engage with your legislator or staffer, because again, if we truly believe that what we do is for every person, then we won't be hesitant about trying to find a way to meet the legislator or staffer where they are and doing this art for them, right? And then lastly, close by putting it all together. Make sure you leave them with the understanding that, hey, this is what we're asking for. This is how you, the legislator, can play a role in solving that problem. And I am your content expert. Lean into the fact that you are the one who's done this work. You are the professional. You are the content expert. Okay. And they can always lean on you for more information. All right, so some meeting tips. These are just some really good things to know. Practice, 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 practice. As artists, we know all about practicing, but for some reason, that goes right out of our brains whenever we think about meeting with legislators or decision makers, okay? Practice what you're gonna say, practice what you're gonna do, practice how long it takes. Just practice. We're used to that. Make sure you stick to the point. If you say you're a theater educator or an arts educator, stick to theater and arts education, and that's what you want to talk about. Stick to that point. Okay? If you want to talk about something else, that's totally fine, but maybe find another time to talk about that other issue. Okay? But stick to the point. And then again, acknowledge their concern and pushback. Oftentimes it's, oh, I can't spend X, Y, and Z funds on arts education because we got to do A, B, and C. Okay, I hear your concerns. I hear your feedback. And then say, that's a valid concern. How about I take some time and we can collaborate and problem solve on how we can meet both of those needs? And come back for your second meeting, come back for your third meeting. It's valid to have concerns, right? Acknowledge those concerns, but also recognize that you and the office or the decision maker are on the same team for finding a solution that fits the needs of the community, but most importantly, the students. And then always send a thank you. I'm a person who likes to write personal thank you cards. I have my little thank you cards over here. You can't see them off screen. But whenever I go to an office, I write a physical thank you card. I address the thank you card and I put a stamp on it and I send it in the mail. Maybe snail mail is not your thing. That's totally fine. Send a email. That's acceptable as well. A phone call, not so much, but definitely some sort of physical card or email to follow up. But the key to that is put the ask in the message. So, whatever your ask was, make sure you put it in the message because they meet with who knows how many people. So, they might forget what they were talking to you about, but because you sent that follow up email or that follow up letter, they have the specific ask and solution in that message. Okay? Um, I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda, and she's going to tell you what's happening on June the 3rd. Oh, sorry, not June the 31st. I'm jumping all the way
March
to
31st, Tuesday.
March 31st.
Yeah, Tuesday, the Arts Education Alliance is going to be hosting a webinar at 7 p.m., March 31st, Tuesday night. And we're going to release a collective vision for equity in arts education. This is our shared advocacy agenda centered on ensuring that every student has access to a high quality arts education. So it'll outline sort of our policy proposals. And then we will also be sharing a little bit of what you heard today. You all kind of got a sneak preview of our survey results, and that is when we will officially launch our FY 2027 campaign. But we would love to have you join us there. And I think that ends our presentation.
Great.
Here's Josh.
Yeah, thank you so much. One of the things that I'm really thankful for, right, is kind of coming up in the chat too, is the great resources that you all have been developing, and I know you've gotten a grant to do some of those. And is mentioned in the chat. I just want to acknowledge that as Jazzmone was offering, right, we can take those, we can adapt those. And want to just offer some appreciations for both Amanda setting the stage for kind of what is happening nationally and Jazzmone, what is happening in the different states. And also I love the end of that. Jazzmone really connected me back to some of the things that Randy was saying as well about the story. And Amanda, I mean, you have been working so hard in the last few years under this administration, and thank you for the great work all three of you are doing in this arena. And we're so lucky to have colleagues like you all as part of the Arts Education Alliance. And I think folks are not always aware that was just recently formed. 2 years is pretty recent. And so we're all working together to find different ways that then what happens in that alliance or out of that alliance, what do the orgs do with that information? And we're really excited is EDTA. And I've only been here less than 6 months, right, to really think about how we create some synergy between those two things. And I see that coming up in the chat too. Want to take just a second. Well, not a second. We have about 20 minutes. I have some closing resources to share and talk about, but in building your action plan for the last 10 minutes. But what questions would you like to ask of Randy, Amanda, or Jazzmone? Would love to give you a second to put some questions in the chat. Yeah, so just to note, we're gathering resources from all the presenters, so not just our folks today, and we'll be able to get that out hopefully by end of next week or the following of the next week. There's a little bit of department restructuring happening in my department or with my department. And so that shift is happening next week, but we'll definitely be able to get the recordings out and the resources out from all the presenters. While we're waiting for questions, Randy, Amanda, or Jasmine, is there anything that you're thinking of that you want to offer that maybe you were like, oh, shoot, I forgot to mention that one thing? 'Cause that sometimes happens.
I do.
Yeah.
A lot of the times when I'm working with advocates, one of the things that they're navigating is no and rejection, which it can feel very daunting to get that no. One of the things that I tend to tell my advocates is, there are going to be people, systems, and structures that you are not aware of that will cause the rejection or the no to your specific ask. Okay. That will happen. Just go ahead and say it. It's going to happen. Not that I'm trying to be pessimistic about it, but there's this shock to the system of how dare they not have the same values and priorities as me? And it's just preparing your mind, your body for that rejection if it happens. Like if it does not happen, yay! I celebrate with you. However, once you accept that no today is not a no tomorrow, and no from one person is not a no from every person, it frees your mind up for creativity in the process, right? I had a principal who's notorious for no, no. I mean, the number of times I went and asked him for different things. But what I learned was that no was often an opportunity for, so tell me more about your no. And it was an opportunity to learn more about how things work that I wasn't aware of, how things function that I wasn't seeing completely. And then I learned a key person within my school structure was not my principal, it was actually my school treasurer. And so I started working with her, I started building relationships, and she was the one who I needed to first work through and work with in order to get the yes. So again, a no from one person is not a no from everyone, and a no today is not a no tomorrow. So keep trying, and you never know where you'll go.
Thank you for
Great
that, Jasmine.
response to that. I was actually going to say something similar because no or not now is like such a common kind of response, and that's fine. But the nice thing about going back politely, respectfully, but persistently is you build that relationship. And what I hear from a lot of folks is, yeah, after the third or fourth visit, I would start to hear from a legislator's office because all this legislation, all these policies, everything comes across their desk. They're like, oh my gosh, okay, this is outer space, this is agriculture. Oh, now we got arts education. And the offices will reach out to you once you build that relationship. And so you become in a sense, an advisor, an authority. And the answer may always sort of be no. And you can go in, it's like, well, I'm just not, we're going to be on opposite sides of the fence on this one, but um, it's just still really important to keep doing it. So just to completely uplift what Jazzmone said.
And to your point, Randy, we have to, as educators, we are professionals in this. Our content matter expertise is arts education. So if someone reaches out to you and is like, hey, I know you because of all the advocacy that you've been doing, lean into being the content matter expert for arts education. And if they have another, let's say they want to talk about music and theater, okay, just be like, okay, I'll find you a connection. And you're still within that sphere of communication, but you are now the connector to all kinds of other art forms, right? You don't have to speak for all of them, but because we are representing arts education, we're not alone. So lean into being that content matter expert and say, I can be the connector, even if I don't have all the answers.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Um,
Amanda.
Josh, I did see the question
Yeah.
from the anonymous attendee. I'm not quite sure what they mean by a database, but we do have the page on the Arts Ed Alliance website that includes all the information about the title programs. It has the toolkit, also some Q&A about who to talk to at the district level around accessing those funds. I can't figure out how to type the URL in there right now, but that's where I would go to get all of that information. And because these are title programs and are formula funded, they do go to every state and most school districts around the country.
One more thing I want to riff off Jasmine again, is she said an important thing there about, we may not have all the answers. Sometimes we'll get questions and you don't have the answer. Happens a lot. And the appropriate answer is, that's a great question. I don't know. And I will get back to you. And I tell you, that is a great strategy because it gives you an exactly expected follow-up type of thing. So it's more than just a thank you follow-up. You come back to them and say, boy, you asked a really interesting question about this. Here's, an XYZ answer. Love to talk about that at our next visit, that type of thing. So every little moment is another opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to offer a few things too that I think are connected both to our conversation today and some of the questions that have been coming up in the chat. One of the things that I think is really important is we are thinking about where the different arts fit and where they're legislated and where they're not. And I often turn to our dance education folks who are even less represented than we are in theater. And sometimes they have some really great resources and tools, as they're also in the same boat where they don't have certification in every state. The amount of dance educators are much lower than music and visual art. And on the flip side, I often think about how I can partner because if visual art and music have the positional power, right, how can we ask those folks to advocate with us? And it's really the California story. So California just got their theater credential back after being gone for 40 years. And it wasn't just because the theater folks were just advocating, but it was because the music and visual arts folks joined in that effort. So one of the things that I'm currently working on is a comprehensive study around states that have licensure, credentialing, all of these different things that will be a tool for theater folks. The second thing, and I'm saying this in front of Randy, our board member, noting that our EDTA landscape study was done in 2012. We're really due for another one, and that will give really comprehensive data about what our teachers saying their needs are, what our principals say, right, which is different than a quick pulse survey. And so that's something I'll be working on in the next year. We'll be launching, excuse me. And I think I offer those things to say We also need more data in order to tell the story, and how do we build coalition with each other? And I think that's also coming up in our conversation. We're not necessarily saying it yet, but building coalition. And like I now feel really comfortable going to Amanda and Jazzmone with my vulnerable question, or Randy, right? But I maybe wasn't when I first met them. So I think really thinking about how we leverage nationally and who those folks are. And I want to name today versus our workshop on Thursday, or earlier on Tuesday, is really thinking about state work or national work, which is a little different than our conversation around advocacy at a more localized level.
Question number three, who delivers the message? There you go.
Yeah,
I was going to
wonderful.
say that in the resources for the Maestro Act, it does talk about how to build coalition. And we talk with our state advocates about building coalition with other arts ed orgs. So if you are curious about who's leading any sort of like policy work for arts education and you want to get engaged at the state level, we recommend that you reach out to what we call the Advocacy Leadership Force member in your state. Joshua, we'll try to send you
Yeah.
all the list of the things, but these advocates are receiving the background training and support and would love to have, some sort of connection to strengthen the arts policy work.
Definitely can share that with the folks that have registered, and also with our state advocacy alliance, which we're working to get off the ground in a different way. So I think that'll be really great. And just to name all those things that I'm sorry, Jazzmone is offering, we are working towards doing that and on our end. So we're seeing what is going to be happening in the future, and so excited to know that we can access those resources now. We don't have to wait. For a magic, in 2 years we'll be able to. So I think we have a lot of work to do on our end, EDTA, certainly. And I know that you all are primed and poised and excited to do work in your own community, your own state, and across the nation. So I'm hearing a lot of big thank yous that are happening in the chat or in the Q&A, and just want to thank you all for your time as well. I'm going to wrap up by just sharing a few little tidbits of things that might be helpful, including a resource that I got from Amanda and Jazzmone. Cheyenne, do you mind putting up the slides really quick? All right. So one of the things that I was hearing, and I think is great to know, is one of the things that EDTA will be sending out later in April is collecting stories of advocacy. And we're going to be putting together what I'm calling, maybe there's a better name, an advocacy flip book. So basically, something that will be a PDF that will have data woven in. How many thespians do we have per state? What are the data about theater that we have that is current, that could be talking points, in addition to highlights of different students or teachers or schools doing advocacy work. And the goal of that will be to release that as a PDF by Summit or TEC, which is there in July. And that will be a guide or a tool that folks can use into the next year. So look out for that survey that we're going to ask folks to send out to teachers, students, etc., to gather those stories. And that'll be a great tool that we're going to give back to you as EDTA members or as folks in the field. And so Cheyenne and I will be sending that out in a few weeks. The second thing that I wanted to offer was a little bit about building your advocacy action plan. And before we get to the tool that was offered from our friends in music, I wanted to note that, when you Google, there's lots of infographics you can find. And I always, obviously we want to cite our sources, but even as Randy and Amanda are talking and Jasmine are talking, you might find there's a certain way, a visual that works for you, or a list that works. And so I also encourage folks to figure out or even draw out visually, what do they think their mind map looks like? Some people are literally a bit more strategic and like a cycle with steps, or some people really like a more sociocultural political look at this, like a Brofenbrenner kind of approach. But I also, as I work with my graduate students, there's so many kinds of infographics out there, and many of them aren't even from advocacy with a capital A. They're coming from healthcare, or they're coming from business, or they're coming from different modes or tools. Um, Another thing that I've been, I don't engage a lot in social media, but there are different things that you can find that are helpful if that's a way for you to kind of think about. This is from the campaign workshop. And I was just noting, right, these are all the things that folks were talking about just a minute ago that we need as we are building our advocacy plan. So just to name that, there's no magical tool that is out there that might work for everyone, but there's a lot of resources out there beyond the great ones that Randy, Amanda, and Jazzmone have shared with us today. I'm a nerd. I'm an academic. I will recommend books, and that's just my love language to folks. And so I just wanted to offer these two books that I've recommended to many of my graduate students. And I just wanted to give you a little heads up about what each book is. The one on the left, Teachers as Policy Advocates, Strategies for Collaboration in Change, was published in 2023 from Teacher College Press. And it's a book that argues that teachers actively participate in policy advocacy is crucial to creating K through 12 educational systems that honor the needs of students, families, and communities. And what the author does is examines obstacles that teachers face to involvement in policy, or barriers to analyzing pre-service and practicing teachers' experiences. And then they present a model for collaborative professional development for teacher policy advocacy. And they use case studies throughout and think about a lot of contemporary policy areas: school safety, student assessment, public health, digital learning, and identify what teachers know about policy and how their views shift in relation to what they do or don't know, and how that can shift and impact collaborative professional development. And it offers real pragmatic or takeaway tools after those case studies for weaving in policy to increase self-efficacy and capacity for policy and advocacy agency, while simultaneously calling for systemic change at district, national, state, or school level. So really great book. I don't know if I've sold you on it, but a great book to maybe think about and look at. Another one that I like as well is called Everyday Advocacy: Teachers Who Change the Literacy Narrative. I'm someone who sometimes I want to read a book that isn't about the arts or isn't about theater. It gives me a perspective, is a way to say, oh, how are other people talking about this in another form? And this is talking about literacy. And it's a collection of essays where literacy educators describe how they're redefining what it means to be a teacher professional. Teachers share how they're trying to change their conversations surrounding literacy and literacy instruction by explaining to colleagues, administrators, parents, and community members why they teach in particular research-based ways, often contradicting mandated material and standardized assessments. Teacher educators in the book also share how they're introducing an advocacy approach to pre-service teaching and practicing in-service teachers, helping prepare teachers for new professionalism. Both groups practice what the authors call everyday advocacy, day-to-day actions that teachers are taking to change the public narrative surrounding schools, teachers, and learning. And so while it's a little bit about literacy, I think it really speaks, you can sub in the art form of theater with what Jazzmone was saying, like you're experts in that content area. So just some tools that are out there that you might be excited by. And this book was also recently published as well. I'm going to give a second for folks to scan this QR code. On the next slide, it will show you what the QR code is. We'll also send this in the follow-up email. This is a PDF of building your individual action plan. And the credit goes to Lori, who is from New York State Council of Educational Associations. And this was generously shared from our colleagues in the Arts Education Alliance. And what this tool looks like is it is a PDF where you can outline your advocacy issue, and it gives you some bullet points of things to fill in and talk about. And then you're able to talk about the benefits of students and the plan of action. Let me fix the settings on that while I do that. Amanda or Jazzmone, do you want to share anything more about this tool?
I can. This tool is, so let me back up a little bit. Lori is an advocate, educator, um, within the arts education space, particularly in New York. But what's great about the tool that she's created, it breaks down, you know, all of the different things that require an effective advocacy plan. And she talks about cost. One of the things that Lori and I talk about is it's not just money, but time is also money. People power is also money. Like that's what we talk about when we say cost. So consider those kinds of things. And, you know, if you're trying to do a schedule change, what is that going to cost you? So it's a really thoughtful, it looks very simple, but you can really dig deep in looking at the questions that she's provided in that form.
The thing that makes me think of too, and this is something I think a lot about in my own work and in my own research, is cultural capital, right? Like that idea of time being capital, the idea of resources being capital. And it makes me think about if some folks are excited in that idea of what cultural wealth is. A lot of things that I talk about in a community, but there's all different kinds of capital and wealth that you can research and think about, and time is one of them, right? Yeah. I think we have a question coming up as well. Oh, just says got it. All right. Anything else to close us out for today, Amanda, Jasmine, or Randy, that is on your mind or want us to share?
I'll just say thanks everyone for being here. And I get to a lot of places, and there's communities where things aren't organized. It's just not happening yet. We talked about not waiting. And just a reminder, you got so many incredible tools, and one person can start a movement. And passion bends reality. That's what we do. So good luck. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing I hadn't mentioned is we really are ramping up the work that the Arts Education Alliance does. So most of it has been virtual to date with webinars, but NAFME is working on a 2-year budget, and so we do have plans to potentially do some sort of Capitol Hill briefing with all of the 5 arts ed disciplines together next year. And then we're anticipating in 2027 doing something collectively where we bring arts educators to Capitol Hill to meet together with their members of Congress. So just stay tuned on some of that and plans that we're working on for the future.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead, Jasmine.
my last thing would be just to start somewhere, even if it's having a conversation with your principal, figuring out a conversation with your other content areas, not just in your school, but in your district. How do you create a coalition just in your district? So start somewhere, and it doesn't have to be big, it can be small, but just start and then see where you go from there. But thank you for being here today.
I'll answer this last question in the chat, and then I have 2 sentences to close us out. We are hosting a meeting in a few weeks. We'll make sure everyone that is registered for this event can attend about EDTA's next steps and the 3-year plan. That meeting will review the 3-year plan. Nothing has changed, but we'll also have a one-pager handout, a recruitment video, and some slides to go along with that. And our SAA, our State Advocacy Alliance coordinator, who's been hired, Janae, will be leading that meeting alongside me. And so we'll make sure that all the folks that have registered will get that information as well as the resources to break that down and answer that question. It's a great one. We want to thank all of our presenters over the past 3 days that have shared their knowledge, encouragement, and strategies. I know that we'll be able to make more individual and collective change in our communities as a result of our virtual EdTA summit. Thanks for joining us for this advocacy event. And I also want to say a big thank you to Cheyenne, who has been working tirelessly behind the scenes. She has only been with EdTA for a short time and jumps right in, and all of the work that she does to make this possible and many, many other things possible for advocacy. It's just her and I that do advocacy here. We're a small, small team. And I want to just say thank you to Cheyenne because truly without her work and her coordination, we would not be able to do this or any of the work that we plan to do over the next few years. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.